Today we're going to show off our top 5 ball pythons that we found at the March NARBC show at Tinley Park. Before we get into it, a couple rules I always put in place. I'm not showing more than one snake from the same breeder, so even if they had something that I would think that'd be normally 1 and 2, they'll be in the honorable mentions. On that, honorable mentions, this is the most snakes we'll have ever shown on one of these videos, quite frankly. If you watch other ones, you know that I always have a bunch of honorable mentions. I don't know how to count, but you get to see some of the very best ball pythons at the Tinley Park show because of that. So let's go ahead and get right into it with number 5. At number 5 from Windy City Morphs would be this acid hypo clown. This is a decently sized girl here. Not a full grown adult by any means, but look at how beautiful it looks. It hasn't lost any of its luster, and that's a real great testament to the absolute quality that's been put into not just this combination of morphs, but into what Windy City is working here. I love what acid or confusion do in clown. It's absolutely one of my favorites. And fun fact, confusion and acid are not the same morph. That has been proven. I love what the pattern does in this, and not just including the belly, because obviously the hypo makes it more ghostly, but what I really love here is just how everything works together. Not only just the pattern, it's so hard to just stay focused and talk about one thing here, because obviously the pattern is just so incredible and gorgeous, but the colors that acid and confusion and any of those genes bring in is underrated. It brings in such nice, beautiful, crisp coloring, especially around the belly of the animal. It's gorgeous, and what hypo does on top of all that is cleans it all up, brightens the animal, and really turns those blacks that it normally would be into a almost purplish, a little bit of lavender coming in. Absolutely gorgeous, and a really wonderful example of what you can do when you work quality genes together. At number 4 from Jersey Guy Balls would be this Mojave Monsoon Clown. Monsoon clowns are awesome, and color is really where it's at with Monsoon. I truly believe that there's not much you can or quite frankly should do when you're talking about working pattern into the Monsoon, because it's already perfect. Monsoon gives it a little bit of a frosty type coloring, and the clown, obviously on the head, you get these beautiful little stars and dots, and it wipes the pattern that would normally be on your ball python's head. But for the sides, I noticed the Monsoon Clown kind of stretches out the dots and makes it more concise, almost like little lettering. It has the dots on the top and throughout, but then on the sides it's almost like a streak moving down. The Monsoon also brings in this awesome shading, which is what really puts it over the top in terms of a Monsoon for me. This awesome, really white, just speckles of dark moving throughout the bottom of it, but then very suddenly halfway up through the snake becomes more of a gold. While the contrast is still a very sudden change, it still seems to flow quite well in this animal. Just imagine this animal without the patterns on it. Just the colors and the granulation throughout it is absolutely gorgeous, but then put those back on and you start to see the contrast of these golden flaky letterings just moving over top of it. Even along the back, it's just a bit of a more solid gold versus a gold lettering just pasted along the side of this animal. There's not much to not love about this animal. It is gorgeous, it is beautiful, and it is a wonderful example of what you can do with a morph that is nearly at the peak of its beauty, but yet there's always more that we can do to add. At number 3 from Kittinger Reptiles would be this Super Orange Dream Yellow Belly Hypo Puzzle. I absolutely love what Puzzle does because it works so well with other genetics, and Hypo is certainly one of them. Puzzle kind of brings in a different coloring too, besides obviously creating this wild and wonky pattern that goes along the side. Whenever you influence the pattern in such a way, like in this beautiful animal here, you are creating breaks and areas where contrast can come in, where different colors can come in, and you can see the absolute beauty near the belly with these breaks, with these whites kind of coming up, but then being pixelated with this beautiful orange, all bordered by a hazy black. Everything that Hypo is going to do is bring that bright, hazy, beautiful look to it and really make the snake shine. And again, with what Puzzle does, it brings in all these breaks and patterns. And in my experience, it pulls it up to the dorsal of the animal. You have all these little flakes of pattern that are nearly flirting with a purple, and when it does fade, you're not getting a faded black. Normally, as a snake starts to get bigger, you'll see a little bit of break in the dorsal pattern, and it usually is a black or a darker coloring that's in there. Sometimes some whites come in a little bit, but that's not the case here. You're getting this citrus splash inside of it because of the Super Orange Dream and the yellow belly just having a great influence. That's a lot of the pixelation that you're getting on the belly there. And what I've noticed is that when you work things into Puzzle, you get a head pattern look similar to a Super Enchi, like with this bladed head. And then look at this little mustache it's got. A very comical Old West villain mustache, or a Wario afro mustache, something along those lines. It's so much cool contrast and a splash of just very, very vibrant, beautiful colors. Seeing one without the super orange stream, it's arguably just as beautiful, but you can kind of see how it doesn't affect the back pattern quite as much here. A lot of people don't know this, but orange stream does affect the pattern a little bit, and you can kind of see here, this doesn't break up the pattern quite as much, whereas on the super orange stream, they look like little floating islands in a sea of yellow. This one seems to push that pattern of a puzzle onto the back of it, albeit in just an extreme way. An absolutely incredible and beautifully vibrant animal that might be arguably one of the brightest ones that we saw at the whole show. At number 2 from Canova would be this red stripe yellow belly jaguar clown. And you might not know about the jaguar gene because it's still relatively new, but looking at a red stripe yellow belly clown versus this, you can most certainly see the massive difference, not only just to the pattern, but to the absolute granulation within that pattern. It really reminds me of a lot of the patterns that you see in boa constrictors, quite frankly, and some of these beautiful combos that they have. There's so much to love because there's just so much contrast in this. The pattern itself is granulated in almost like a rusty type red, and it goes throughout the entire animal, be it through its head all the way through the body. The snake is definitely more pattern than it is anything else, which is awesome, but there's still just enough of the unbroken background that really stands to contrast the pattern that this animal is throwing off. I absolutely love the granulation on this animal, and I know a lot of this obviously isn't just the jaguar. The yellow belly is definitely bringing in a lot of that. The red stripe is bringing in that rusty looking color, but jaguar is definitely contributing to this with its just wild and wonky patterns. It's very, very busy. There's so much all over it that you're looking at and you can see and you can disseminate. There's triangles down here. It looks nothing like the normal pattern of a ball python. I just can't get over how clean the other parts of the animal are, which serve as another type of contrast. Like I said, you have the color contrast here. You have the pattern contrast, but one thing that's not often thought about is what you're looking at here is a very granulated side right next to something that's bright and clean. That's hard to do, and it shows why Justin is so incredible at this and why I don't think there's been a single one that we've ever done. He isn't in the top 5. Before we get to our top pick for our first honorable mention from Brad Boa's Reptiles would be this black pastel banana Enchi lace clown. What's so incredible about this is that this animal looks so good, but it is in shed. We do have a photo of it from Instagram here of how awesome it is, but it really just seems to glow. It looks like it has hypo, and that is not just from it being in shed. A lot of that can be said for what lace is doing for this animal. Next up from Brock Wagner Reptiles would be this absolutely beautiful banana calico monsoon. And I often say that a lot of what people should work into monsoon is color, because monsoon's patterns, it's already perfect. What's so awesome about this is you still get the beautiful banana coloring, these nice yellows coming in, but the lavender, I wonder how much that might change as the animal grows and if it will come in even stronger, and then each one of those little teeny raindrops is going to be a beautiful lavender splash. Also from Brock Wagner would be this awesome Ultramel puzzle, and I can't wait till I can create my monarch puzzles. When I started seeing these come out, I immediately knew where I wanted to go with these directions. I absolutely love what puzzle does to absolutely mess up the pattern and create more breaks in the pattern. Puzzles definitely seem to affect the head, especially when they're with another genetic. It doesn't even seem to matter what it is. You can see the eye stripe is completely broken up there as well. It almost looks like it's got 2 little lavender spots on its cheeks now. And similar to others we've shown, where it does break and fade and the pattern is filled in with a nice crisp orange, which is really great to see. It doesn't really fade in your traditional sense with just kind of a blotch of white. It just adds some nice orange to it instead. Next up from Goodies Exotics would be this super blackhead, super red gene clown. Red gene is one that you don't hear about a lot, but it's another very subtle gene that when worked in the right combos can do some really amazing things. But I really love what the genetics have done to the pattern. It has completely squished them to the side in this just ever on-flowing wave of hoops and loops just kind of moving throughout the animal. The body of the snake has this nice beautiful tan to it. There's a really nice white base, and again, I've said this on a few of them, but whenever you can get those whites creeping up into the pattern just ever so slightly and then abruptly changing to the color of the snake, that is always really nice to me, because then it just adds even more contrast to pull those whites up from the belly. But again, really where it's at to me is just the wild pattern. It is insane and it is squished just along the entire sides of it. A few from Canova again, starting off with another special Pompeii. Baker's a line of special, but we have shown off the special Pompeii, but we haven't seen one ever since JSA had it probably like 2 years ago. It was absolutely gorgeous then, and still to this day might remain probably my most favorite version of the Pompeii I've ever seen. It's not quite a complete inversion of color, but it definitely flips it on its head and creates more of a fiery look to the entire animal rather than the more magma-like sides that you're getting out of the normal Pompeii. You still have these glowy sides, but a little bit of orange just kind of creeping in, but the actual body of the snake itself, other than the pattern, goes from being more of a rusty red to a more citrusy type orange. The beautiful granulation of the sides is still there. You just get a brighter animal. And you thought we were done talking about Pompeiis? Well, think again, because here is a desert ghost Pompeii. It's also insane that this animal might help create something even more insane because it is double het or hypo and genetic stripe. The desert ghost Pompeii, somewhat similarly to the special Pompeii, really just serves to lighten the animal up and create more of an orangey sides, but yet it does it with its own flavor. As this animal ages, I don't really see it changing very much, because that's what the beauty of desert ghost does, is it keeps things as clean as possible, and it usually keeps them aging very, very beautifully. You're gonna get these nice splashes of orange going down the back and throughout the sides, and the pattern should stay vibrant and beautiful through its entire life. Another favorite at their table of mine would be this lace yellow belly zebra. I've talked about the zebra and why I think it's one of the best morphs out there. It makes a really beautiful display animal because often when the animal has no pattern along its back, you're gonna kind of need to get into a position like this to show it. But with a zebra, it stretches that beautiful pattern throughout the entire animal. What yellow belly does is absolutely explodes it and shows a beautiful, vibrant coloring with a lot of shading, and then the lace just comes in, amps that up a couple notches, and then brings in this beautiful popcorn effect or static on your TV effect along the sides of it, as lace can quite often do. It's bright and very, very busy. It is definitely one of the best, if not the best, examples of the zebra morph that I've ever seen. From Straight Fire Reptiles would be this beautiful desert ghost exanthic clown. The only reason I don't want to crack it into the top 5 would be the same reason for the special Pompeii. It's that I've already shown those in previous top 5s. Not from Straight Fire, but this one still is just as good and beautiful. There's a reason Levance has a really great reputation in this community of being some of the best quality ball pythons that you can find. There is such wonderful contrast. It is a pure stark white to a jet black coloring. The only other color to this animal is its crystal blue eyes, but the absence of color can be a form of contrast. These pure snow whites and this jet black really just helps to clean up the animal and calls attention to such great detail and beauty in its patterns. This one here has a little bit of size to it as well, so you can start to see that this really isn't going to change very much. Often exanthics do change, but not when you get desert ghosts in the mix, which is really the glue that holds this together. This type of color palette, it really rivals and starts to draw comparisons to the famous Stormtrooper from JD Constrictors. Unlike that one, which turned more and more dark as it grew, I think this one's color palette is pretty much set in stone. It really goes to show you the power and beauty of what you can do when you work these genetics together and weave them in a way that you can tell a beautiful story. And I would love to see it with something like Confusion, something that adds even more nutty pattern and brings in a whole bunch more to look at. And from Rice Reptiles would be this Orange Dream Enchi Mahogany Lavender. There's something to be said about these types of animals which just have a starbursty type look to them with these pinks coming in. There's no real other way to explain the pattern here. Obviously you have these bright yellows and oranges splashed throughout the animal, but the pattern itself has been severely reduced by the combination of the Orange Dream and the Enchi. The Mahogany just brings in even more color to it, but in the color of the pattern here you see these pinks coming through. It's a faded type pink, but it is a pink nonetheless. You don't get that color from really any other combination than when you're using lavender, and it shows why to this day that the lavender still has a whole bunch of things that it can still be worked into to create absolutely beautiful snakes bursting with color. Another one from Windy City Morphs would be this Hurricane Yellow Belly Mahogany Het Desert Ghost Girl. We showed off a Hurricane clown from Windy City Morphs that was in our top 5 last time and talked about its eye stripes, but Mahogany here just wipes those eye stripes away and you get that nice caramel head. The pattern on the side is absolutely gorgeous though. Again, squished up but then moved more towards the top of the dorsal so you can see it from the top of the snake, and then you have this beautiful white wall sides creeping up quite far, quite frankly, to nearly the top or at least the middle of the pattern of this animal. You go from a caramel head to a shadowy black back, these beautiful white walled sides, and then this just crisp orange pattern that just kind of loops throughout the entirety of the animal, almost like little infinity signs going all the way down. And then finally would be this Orange Dream Yellow Belly White Lace Het Clown Boy. This really shows off how beautiful white lace is and what you can do with it. Look at those sides, these nice beautiful popcorny like sides. sides. It's almost, if you were to just see that, look like it's about to become a monsoon, but then just stops right at the belly and then leaves the pattern on top. It's wild and wonky and adds a different kind of contrast, and that's what white lace can do for you. A very subtle gene all by itself, but when packed into certain combos or into itself, you get some incredibly extreme results. When you really consider the fact that this is just orange dream yellow belly and then 2 copies of the lace gene, it just really goes to show you how powerful lace is and why you should definitely consider working it. I would love to see the visual clown version of this, and I'm very excited to eventually see that happen. And coming in at number 1 from Morph Jungle would be this absolutely incredible Sunset Ultra Mel. I remember when people said Sunset was just a morph that would brown out. Oh boy, were they ever wrong. It is absolutely incredible how intense this animal is. It is the peak of Sunset. It has now replaced and become my favorite Sunset. Its color is just so intense and beautiful, and you know it's just going to keep this up as it ages and keeps more of a caramely type coloring. Again, this is just 2 recessives. I can't wait to see what people do when they create this and put this in with other morphs. Being a Monarch guy myself, it is incredibly inspiring on what I want to work. For the longest time, I didn't know how Sunset might fit into my collection. I now know what I want to work it into. Because it is this beautiful in Ultramel, I can only assume it is going to be absolutely beautiful as well with Monarch. Maybe I'm a little biased in putting it at number 1, but I definitely think the future of this morph of Sunset is being rediscovered. I think that it has long since silenced its critics. It is everything that Sunset should be and more. There is an electric yellow moving down the dorsal of this animal. It is a beautiful crisp orange, and then to top it off, it still has these little ruby red eyes that you can see in there. A bright, beautiful orange animal, which is going to keep these colorations and maybe even enrich them as it ages. I can't wait to see the future of what people start to work into these types of combos, and of course I can't wait to eventually work it into my Monarch projects, because that is something that in the future is in the cards as well. Hope you enjoyed the video. Obviously our top 5 is more than 5 snakes by quite a bit. How many did we show off here? 13, 14, 15, 16, which is, I believe, the most we've ever shown. I'm still not changing the name. Top 5, it's more marketable, just trust me. What animals would you have picked? Were there any at the show that you really liked? Let us know in the comments below, and check out our full walkthrough of the Tinley Park show right here.